Nick, thank you so much for being here today. We're so grateful we get to interview you. I would love if you could introduce yourself.
Courtney, thank you for having me. Very happy to be here. Yeah, so let me introduce myself. So I'm, I guess there's not a ton to tell that's that interesting. I've kind of lived all over the United States. I'm not exactly sure, I guess where I'm from anymore. I'm raised near Seattle area, and then from there I kind of bounced around between Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, San Diego, New York City, Boca Raton, Miami, and now up here in Wilmington, Delaware. And so a lot of the bouncing around is well, there's a lot of immaturity behind that, but mostly it's my wife and I just kind of picking up and trying to decide out where we belong. And I work in the financial industry. That's where my professional life has been, and so I've done a lot of sales and operations in there, and that's kind of taken me around the United States a bit. But yeah, we've been here in Delaware now for like about 2 years, maybe 3 years now. Just my wife and I and our fur child Patches. And when we're not working, we like to kind of sit and relax and do nothing. And actually, one of my favorite pastimes is reading under this little tree we have in our backyard with our stand-up hammock. Uh, that's that's really kind of the basic of me.
Love that. I would love if you could tell us what your book's about.
Sure. So my book is titled "In the Beginning," a work of fiction. So this book it changes the story of creation. It creates a very bold and controversial news story that reverses the rules of the afterlife in order to challenge God and traditional thinking. So in this book, God is evil, the devil is good, and they're combating for control of the afterlife. They're using humans as pawns to change the future of existence. And I describe God as this. Well, let me back up a little bit. So, in this book, God doesn't create the earth. The devil creates the earth and creates the earth as this gift for God. I then describe God as this evil, power hungry tyrant that is jealous of this beautiful earth that Lucifer creates and decides to destroy it with a plague, the plague of humanity. So, a complete reversal of the traditional beliefs that humanity possesses for heaven and hell. And the book really challenges God by asking this question: why should we worship a God that allows the suffering of innocent life? Now, the book is broken up into two parts. There's a recreation of the Old Testament and a recreation of the New Testament. So, in the first part of the book, imagine the Matrix movie. It'll change your entire perspective to the purpose of humanity. And it includes a description of God as this very manipulative, arrogant ruler that chooses to torment life on our planet. A God that creates money, power, greed, and war as tools that humanity will use to destroy the earth. And then the second part of the book, the second part of the book is set in modern day times, and it's with two humans that have been brought together through orchestrated traumatic events brought on by God and the devil in order for them to be forced to choose a realm to rule over, heaven or hell. Ultimately deciding the fate for every soul in existence. So I know that's kind of a lot to unpack, but what I'm doing in this book is pretty controversial. It can be seen as a bit blasphemous. I am challenging God and religion, basically comparing what people think God is versus what God is actually doing to our global society. And what God is doing is torturing humanity. So I'm trying to get people to understand, and we'll get into this, I'm sure, with some of your questions. But very, very controversial. However, the story does center around the need for world peace, equality, and true love. That is, a lot to unpack in that. But yeah, that's what the book is about in a nutshell.
Love that. When you were writing your book, who were you thinking of when it comes to who your book is for?
Yeah, a good question. So I think this might get into a little bit of how I was inspired as well, but I think we're going to ask that in a bit. But so I wrote this really for every human on the planet. And I say that because what I'm trying to do is inspire humanity to accept a shared vision of life, one of us living together in peace. I want, I mean, everyone to have that message, to desire that, and that's what this book, that is the main theme of this book. Everyone reads that book, they will walk away with that message. So, um, yeah, ultimately trying to get that across to every human on the planet, and really, I mean, I'm targeting every human on the planet with that, but also mainly people that do have beliefs that, if they don't believe in equality, if they as a way of reaching those individuals. That's kind of the purpose of what I'm doing here, trying to spread that message. Yeah, that's who I'm trying to reach.
Love that. What inspired you to write your book?
So two things inspired me really. So it started with my wife. So she loves me, and I kind of took her lead in this life. And when I took her lead, it kind of, I'm a big fan of a big supporter of the female lead. And when I say that, my wife kind of just drove me to be a more empathetic human. And when you are a more empathetic human, you're not sympathetic. You don't just feel bad for someone. You want to understand someone, understand how they feel. And the more empathetic I became, the more I wanted to help other people. And I always had it, I'm sure we all do. We all want to help other people. And of course, we want world peace, those kind of things. But the more I was inspired by her, it just drove me to do it more. And so that's what drove that started my inspiration. And then when I became more empathetic, the second part was really the state of the world and the lack of human equality. That was the second piece that inspired me. And I took that really to heart, like when I wrote this. And it's I used to, I work in the financial industry. I'm really, a lot of the part of this book is about doing what you don't want to do in life to pay the bills. And so I would write a lot of this book like in transit on the subway in New York and in Philadelphia home, and like literally put pen to paper, because I was so upset with my job. And I would just write how I would like the world to be different. What is wrong with the world? And created this story to get that message across. Uh, I created this work of fiction just to do just that. Uh, yeah, that's a little long-winded answer for what inspired me, but there's kind of a lot to it of how I came about with this book.
Love that. How long have you been writing and what made you really sit down and start?
Oh yeah, this is good. So I didn't really start writing until I kind of started in college a little bit, but not much. In college, I used to like um, send my friends little funny messages, like very apocalyptic, demonic messages, um, as a joke. I started kind of writing like that. That's kind of how I write. Kind of writing this kind of old, I guess maybe I don't know how anyone would describe it. Actually, kind of a there's a demonic tone sometimes when I write. I kind of like to write apocalyptic and an apocalyptic, meaningful nature. And so that's how I kind of started. But then after college, I didn't really continue doing that at all. I kind of steered away from that, and then I finally got back to it. The more that I searched for a purpose on this planet, the more I wanted to achieve, to do something important. And what I was doing at work is not important. I'm basically, I'm just pushing a few keys on a keyboard to do nothing really. And I wanted purpose. And I was in, and when you're at work and you're doing something you don't like, and you see something terrible happening on the news, one tragedy after another, and you just kind of it kind of drives you mad because you're doing something without purpose. You want to have purpose. You don't know what to do. So that's when I started writing, and I mean, so I started writing this book. I mean, I self-published this through Amazon about 3 years ago, and up to that point, I had been writing for about 5 years. This story, so probably I started about 8 years ago, and I mean, let's see. I mean, that's really how it started coming about. But it wasn't anything like particular of a long history of it. It's really just to create a purpose for myself. That's, how I started, and really why I write. I write to inspire, to influence. That's my goal with writing. Yeah.
Love that. What is your schedule like when you are writing a book?
So this is tough. So when I wrote my first draft, that's the one I was saying earlier, is that I would do that in transit, like on the train. And so that like it's probably about like an hour a day. And once I got through the first draft, like I would sometimes do it on the weekend. I would get a little more regimented on the weekends as it progressed. And so, but most of it was done in transit. That's the first draft. And then after that was done, I just typed it all out. And after I typed it out, I realized it was a mess. And so I had a lot of editing to do. And so what I would do to do that was really, when you work full time, it's basically impossible, at least for me, to write, because you have to have like pure focus, uninterrupted focus. And so I was limited to the weekends. So I would, like on Saturday, let's say, I would like to get started maybe around 10 o'clock or between 10 and 2 o'clock, depending on when I would wake up. And I would probably sit there, I mean, sometimes for like 8 hours, sometimes for a little, maybe 5 hours or so. And sometimes I would only get like through like one page. Like my goal was to like make everything sound perfect within a paragraph, within a sentence. It's difficult. So you don't really, sometimes, you don't feel like you made any progress after doing like 8 hours worth of work, but you may have one paragraph that's exactly the way you wanted it to sound. And that was my goal. And so I just kept that repetitive process going. And finally, I got through about, I think, 17 drafts. Finally, my 17th draft was ready. And even up to that point, like, I worked full time, so I couldn't do anything except for the weekend. So there was a period of time when we were moving from Philadelphia to Florida, and when we were in Florida, where I was like, well, a few things happened to my employment down there. Basically, we moved for the wrong reason. But anyway, that's another story. But I was unemployed for like 6 months down there. And during that time, like my wife was finishing up her master's here in Philadelphia. I was still down there by myself, and we were like going back and forth between, you know, you know, uh, she was staying with her parents, so I would go visit her parents, or she would come down and see me. But when she wasn't there, which would be weeks at a time, like I would just sit in this little tiny apartment we had in Boca Raton, Florida, and I would just do it all day. I would get up at 8 o'clock or so, and I would probably finish up at like 6 o'clock at night, and just pound through it. And so basically reading each draft over and over again and fixing and fixing. That was my like my answers were so long and drawn out for you. I apologize, but it was a big process for me. That was tough. But yeah, just like, and no distractions either. Like no, I don't listen to music. I don't do anything. It's just I have a computer, and I don't get on the internet. It's just complete focus, and kind of I like to sit in kind of an uncomfortable chair too. So I found if I sat in like a comfortable spot, before I know, I'm like I've been taking a nap or something. So you gotta really kind of pound the pavement a bit to get it done. So yeah, that was my process. Kind of a lot of different avenues, but nothing really. It did get regimented, but nothing quite at first. Yeah, bounced around a bit.
Love that. What do you need in your writing space to help you stay focused?
So the least amount of things around me, the better. Like I would, this sounds stupid, but I would turn off like your Wi-Fi on your computer. Not like you can't turn it on in 1 second, but I would do little things like that. So I wouldn't get distracted. I'd put my phone away completely, so that I'm only looking at like Microsoft Word. That's the only thing I would try to pay attention to. And I wouldn't eat very much during that time either. I would really just like write and drink water. It sounds so stupid, but but for me, I have a very active imagination. That's easy for me to just think about one thing and move to the next. And so what I found is the more that I literally did just one single thing, one piece of focus writing, the better the more I improved, and the better my story got. So yeah, I try to not be around anything at all, not around any people, I can't. I tried to write in a bar once when this is before we moved to Florida, and it was a terrible experience. I mean, and I wasn't really drinking that much, a couple beers or something, but like I couldn't. It was more. I mean, I reviewed what I wrote the next day, and I was like, "Ah, this is garbage." But but it was a good learning experience because like I thought, like, oh, maybe I'll be um, influenced by the people I'm around and the atmosphere, the environment. Maybe that'll help the creativity. And for me, it did. No, I just need to zone in like with horse blinders, no distractions. That's what I have to have. I can't have any kind of distractions in in the process.
Love that. What is your favorite writing snack or drink?
You're gonna laugh at me, Courtney, but it's literally it's just water. And I just do that on purpose. Like if I have something, I want something else. I have to like limit. I'm kind of like an all or nothing kind of person, which is not good. I need to have like my wife, and he tells me I need to be able to have a more. I don't know what's it called? Even keel, perhaps, not just all or nothing. So I like for me, if I'm writing, I'm drinking water out of like one specific water bottle, and that's it. No snacks, no food, nothing else until I'm finished. And yeah, that I tell you, it sounds so ridiculous. I feel like I'm making a fool of myself,
No. I
but yeah,
love it though. It's
it's,
your
it's
process,
yeah, yeah.
and
It
it
sounds
brings up a good point. Everyone's process is different.
yeah, yeah, no, well said. You're right. Yeah, I mean that's if I had sit there and like have chips or anything, or like I'll just be too distracted. I can't do it. I have to just have one thing. A little
Love it.
simple, a little too simple.
What type of books do you personally enjoy reading?
Sure. So I go between. Oh wow, this has evolved a lot over the years too. So as a kid, I was just. It's always been fiction. I've never strayed too much. Actually, not really at all much. Or just fiction, and mostly fantasy and science fiction is where I really started as a kid. Like as a kid, I used to read like a lot of books about dragons, a lot of books about uh, King Arthur and Robin Hood. These a series of books called like what's it called? Redwall Abbey, I think, is part of the series, and it's basically mice and ferrets and rats and other small animals that have a society, and they're kind of like the King Arthur of that world. That's how kind of how I started. But then I started growing a bit. I like to read a lot of let's see, over the past, I'd say the last 7 or 8 years or so, I'll have like one fiction book that's just a story I'm interested in, fantasy or science fiction usually, and then that'll be like a day book if I have time to read during the day, and then at night I'll usually have like a classic, and my classics aren't like I don't know well, how do I describe like I just finished Dracula last night. I'll like I'm trying to like go through like the basic classics and check them off my list. I did Mark Twain before that. I like a lot of Jules Verne. Um, that's really where my head is at. So I'll find something I'm interested in as like a topic of fantasy as like a more of a recreational read, and then I'll have like a more like a fundamental classic that I'll read at night. That's how I kind of like it. I kind of view it as changing TV channels. That's usually my wheelhouse. But also I focus on, being an independent author now, I focus on a lot of indie authors as well. So I'll meet independent authors on Instagram and, I'll read their book, they'll read mine. And it's great doing that. Because you pick up some books that you wouldn't usually pick up, they're independent authors. A lot of the independent authors aren't in the mainstream stores. And so I've gone down that road a bit as well. Yeah, that's usually where I'm at with reading.
Love that. Are there any books or authors that inspired you to become a writer?
Wow, that's a tough one. I think so. Yeah, yeah. So Jules Verne is probably my favorite author. When I read 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, I read that first as a kid, but then revisited it again, probably before I started writing my book. And it just really kind of it really hit home to me. Basically, I'm sure you know the basics of the story, but it's really a guy who's tired of the way the world works and decides to go underwater and live a life of exploration and science. And when I read that, like I just like that message of someone that was struggling with how the world operated and was tired of war and inequality and the terrible things that we see that happening, and you feel so helpless when you're just you're a singular human like myself, and you're going to work and just doing your things to pay your bills. You feel like you can't do anything. You feel without hope. You feel despair. When I read that book, it kind of lifted me up a little bit and helped me. 'Cause I understood what he was saying. I was like, yes, he's like he saw the future too. He said he couldn't handle. He hated the way the world was. Hated how humanity was, and I felt like that too. I was describing earlier when you like receive the news, you see all these terrible things, and so you want to do something about it, and I couldn't do anything. If you don't have a ton of money, what do you end up? You can do things, but it's tough, and so I thought the best way to do is to write how I felt down, and that's what I did, and I think that inspired me a lot. And another big book that inspired me as a kid was Roots by Alex Haley. I read that I think maybe 3 or 4 times as a kid, and I don't know that really it's a book about inequality and inhumanity, and it spoke to me. It's like, what would you do if you were in that situation? If that was happening today, what would I do? You feel like you would be forced to do whatever it took to make equality be realized by all of humanity, or to keep innocent life safe. And so that inspired me too. And that's kind of what I'm always searching for. A lot of times when I read is I like those kind of stories because I it just sounds a little silly, and we don't know each other, Courtney, but like that's what I want too. Like I'm my purpose is to inspire humanity to accept virtuous a, a virtuous thing. A virtuous thing is equality among humanity. That's why I write. And so I think those authors help shape that because that's what their stories were about. Yeah.
Love that. You've touched on this, but what books did you grow up reading? And did you have an all-time favorite?
Yeah. So I won't repeat some of the other books, but so another, let's see, I read, so books more of growing up. I know so the books I was growing up with, and what was the second part?
Your all-time
All time
favorite.
favorite. All time favorite. All right. Yeah, I won't repeat the ones I said. So I think growing up, I read this book, I think 10 times. It was called Fallen Angels by Walter Dean Myers. It was a book about Vietnam, the Vietnam War, and it was really intense. And I was kind of young when I read that too. Uh, that book shaped me a lot, and as well as Dune. So I read that as a kid, and I know Dune is a big deal now as well. And so I reread it recently, and it got me involved in the series again, which I loved. And it's also kind of an uprising of humanity and equality book. And yeah, those were, and so as a kid though, I read it as well. And so those were some big books for me as a kid. And Sphere by Michael Crichton. I love that book too. And another, like, I don't know if you can tell, but a lot of the books I focus on are really like psychological thrillers too. I like deep emotional books. So my favorite, so of all time, I mean, I'm gonna have to repeat it. I lied to you, Courtney. I told you I wasn't going to. I'm gonna repeat it. I can't help it. It's 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. This is it's my favorite. And I read like, or that I read that one by Jules Verne, and then I kind of went off and read like 4 other books of his. Um, but I think 20,000 Leagues is my favorite of all time. And it's crazy because yeah, it was written so long ago, and it's like really relevant to today. I mean, you literally could see the future. It's kind of insane, but yeah, those are my books for sure.
Love that. On the opposite side of that, now as an adult, what are your favorite series or authors that if they come out with something, you automatically grab it?
The only I don't really focus too much on authors these days. At least for like the past 10 years, I don't think I really have, except for um let's see here. Except for the Dune series. And that's that I read the first and second, and then I went back to another a prequel by his son. I think was it Frank Herbert's the author, and his son. I can't remember his son's name. I think Frank Herbert's his. Oh God, I'm so embarrassed now if I said the wrong name. Whatever. um, but if and he has obviously passed away, may he rest in peace. But if his son wrote more books, I'm sure I would pick that up. But other than that, I really don't focus too much on a specific author. And because of what I was saying earlier too, is that I'll always have a classic in the background. I like to, if I was going to kind of focus on one author, I kind of go to the Jules Verne approach. You know, if I found a classic author that I really liked, I'd pick up another one of theirs. And and I think that's just because I like to catch up on items that I feel like I should have read at this time of my life. So that's kind of how I do my reading. But I'm not as involved as I should be in like contemporary, popular works. Like, I really don't go down that path that much. I should feel a little guilty.
What would you tell someone just starting out with reading again?
Great question. So I really think of reading as like a workout for your brain. You ever see that movie, Lady in the Water by M. Night Shyamalan? Ever seen that by chance? Yeah, whatever. There's a scene in the movie. It's funny because there's a guy that works out one side of his body, and his bicep is like huge, and his other bicep is like really tiny. And I always think about that with books. Is that a lot of people don't understand is it's not the actual material that you're reading. I mean, the material is important, obviously, but it's more of what it does to your brain. It teaches your brain to focus on one particular subject, one particular topic, a conversation for a specific period of time. However, and that period of time is as long as you choose your reading for. I would say to anyone who's just picking up again is not to get discouraged. You're going to come up, you're going to pick up a book a lot of people said was amazing, or someone recommends to you, and you're just like, this book is not any good, and you're going to feel a little bad. You'll feel a little depressed. You're like, oh, I wanted to start reading, and I tried, and this book stinks. And you get like that happened to me too. Like after college, I was kind of not into reading. Kind of post college, kind of tired of it. I think a lot of people go through that. And I picked up a few books, and I was like, this. I'm like, ugh. And I actually made me feel a little like unintelligent. I'm like, why can't I start reading again? And I kind of was down on myself a little. So I say to people, don't get down on yourself. I recommend 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea as a way to start. But I would say, like, get involved. I would make someone like, I would love to make someone a list of like, look, stick to these works of fiction, try these first, like a very diverse list I would give, and would include Dune, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, but mostly fantasy, just as a way of escaping, just escape to this other world, everything else behind you, and get involved here. And, a lot of people will give advice of, if you don't like a book, don't finish it. And I have done that, I think, twice. But I don't like to do that. I would say to someone, I'm like, look, if you don't like it and it's really hard, I'm like, just stick it out. Do stick it out, unless it's really, really terrible and you can't finish it. Then don't stick it out, but don't make a habit of it. But look, treat it like an exercise. Like before you go to bed at night, I used to have a routine, 10 pages a night, no matter what. And just get, and you do 10 pages a night. I mean, you do some pretty good work. 10 days, you got 100 pages. I mean, that's a nice chunk of a book, but that's how you get going. You just have to make it a process. Just like if you were working out or something, you kind of got to make it a bit of a process, a habit. But then you start focusing more, you start wanting it more, you like the imagination and the creativity that it gives you. That's how I would kind of steer someone back into writing. Sorry about my long-winded answers here. I mean, I feel like I'm so like,
No,
I go off the path a little. I can't help
love it. Love it.
it.
On the other side of that, what would you tell someone just starting to write their own book?
So for their own book, I have a lot of advice for that. So if someone's going to start their own book, I would say, like, look, you're going to start writing, you got to take this really seriously. If you work full time, it'd be a conversation. You'd be like, look, do you work full time? We all work full time, basically, most of us. And I'm like, look, if you work full time, it's going to be pretty difficult. Try to do it in transit. If you can't do it in transit because you drive, then you may be able to do some work at home after work, but maybe not. And don't get discouraged if you can't. If you can't focus, take a Saturday, start early. Start at get up at like 7 a.m., breakfast, do anything you need to do. And then the rest of the day, you are devoted to writing, and that's it. Don't do anything else. You have to sit and focus and do nothing else, because what you can create if you have pure focus, and pure focus comes from reading. The more you read, the more focus you will be able to have. You need that when you're writing. You can't have a conversation. I mean, I shouldn't say can't. You should try not to have a conversation. Try not to do anything else except for writing. That's it. Do nothing else and see what happens. And then you'll adjust. Your process may adjust. You may find that, all right, reading in this little room, maybe I like to, or writing in this room, maybe I like to write in the park. Maybe I like to write in nature. Maybe I like to, you'll just kind of find yourself. But it starts with not being distracted. And you will find, you should be prepared. Like if you're seriously ready to write, like today, like you've got a good story in your mind. Okay, well, if you've got a good story, then you got to write that down, because that story may change your life. It could be worth something, and it could influence people, inspire people. It could be a lot of great things. There's nothing more important than perfecting that craft, and you can't lose focus on that. And so your friends may call you on Saturday and say, "Look, hey, let's go out tonight. Let's do something," and you will have to tell people, "I can't," and people won't really understand that either. I've had to have a few conversations with some friends, like, what's the matter with you? I'm like, look, this is what I'm doing. I'm finishing this book. That's what I got to do. I'm writing. I mean, you do you have what you do. This is what I do, and a good friend will understand that. But it's tough. It's and be prepared for it to be tough. Like you'll be depressed about it, and have some despair, because you might not get your character right at first. You might not get the story right. Or it might not sound very good. You may sit and stare at one page for 6 hours and make little or no progress. And you have to expect that. Set your expectations that it will be difficult, and very, very, very difficult. Yeah, that's what I would say to someone. Yeah. As someone who's been through the process. Yeah, it's focus.
Love that.
Yeah.
What's one thing that people are generally surprised to find out about you?
So I think people are generally surprised about my real professional life. It's like, I mean, I'm a pretty easygoing person. I like to joke around a lot. I'm more of a fun-loving kind of shenanigan person. I like to be self-deprecating. I don't like to take myself too seriously. I like to make fun of myself. That's who I am. I think that people can see that, but people are a little surprised that I do like my job. I'm in the financial world, which I cannot stand. And I talk about this a lot in the book. A lot of the book, the second part in Modern Day Times is actually loosely based on my wife and I, our time in New York City, when we're working these terrible financial jobs and hating them and being mistreated. It goes into a lot of stuff with that. And so, wait, I got off track. Wait, repeat. Can you repeat that one more time? I got off track.
Generally surprised to find out about you.
Sorry, Courtney. Sorry, I can get off track sometimes. Yeah, so they're surprised that I am in this. I mean, it's not like an amazing job, but it's a professional. I think it's shocking that I'm in a professional role. I'm just plugging along in operations, pushing buttons in the financial world. I've done that in sales and financial world. I've been doing that for I don't know, 15 years, and just I don't exactly. I think I kind of look unprofessional in the office too, because you and I can see each other, but nobody else can. But my hair is a little I kind of look like a wizard or something. I don't know, like a weirdo. I kind of look a little strange. And what's funny is because I kind of keep this very separate from work. No one really at work knows I have a book, or I just keep it separate. But a couple of people do, and I have an Instagram page, and it's really ridiculous and very embarrassing. I do a lot of embarrassing, silly things And like, I don't want people from work seeing that, but like some people from work do see it and they're like, dude, I didn't know that you're doing this, like, so I guess it's surprising for both sides. Like my professional coworkers are very shocked, and especially because a couple of them have read the book, and I say some very bad things about the professional world because I've experienced some bad things, and my wife has too. And like, I talk about like, you know, beating up your boss and a few other, and it's pretty intense. So people are shocked to hear that, and then people from the book world, and they like I've ran across people on like LinkedIn I've met in the book world. And like, oh, you actually have like a job. I'm like, yeah, I got something else too. So it's surprising for both parties. I think the professional world and the social world. It's kind of it's funny.
Love that. Is there anything you would like to say or add?
Sure. So when you're thinking about this book, think of it as a true adventure. I mean, it's original, thrilling, entertaining, and thought-provoking. And we all need to go on an adventure. Like imagine like The Hobbit. Like like Bilbo Baggins is talking to the dwarfs in his house, and he's like really scared to go on the adventure with them, go back and reclaim their homeland. He's nervous because there's gonna be danger. He might die, but ultimately he decides to go on this adventure and it changes his life for the better. That is very similar to the adventure that lives in this book. It will make you feel. It is intense. It is controversial, but ultimately a story that will unite humanity around a shared vision of life. And that vision is us living together in peace. That's what I wanted to share.
Love it. Where's the best place for readers to find your book? I know some readers love signed copies. Is that an option and the
Oh,
best
yeah.
place to connect with you?
Sure. So my book is available on Amazon. If you just type Nick Girard in the search function, my book In the Beginning will come right up. And the best way to get in contact with me is through Instagram. My Instagram name is Nick D. Girard. And for signed copies, so what I do is I send free copies of my book. Like I meet people on Instagram. I send free copies all over the world and sign them. So I mean, everywhere from like Pakistan, India, the country of Jordan, Morocco, Madagascar, France, all over the world. But I love doing that. It brings me joy. But yeah, if you want a copy of my book, just hit me up on Instagram. And I'll send you a free copy, shipping and everything. I do it all the time. It's a big part of like how I spread the word of it. But it's something that makes me really happy. Don't be shy. Yeah, I love talking to people about it. I could do it all day.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for being here today. We're so grateful we got to interview you. We'll be sure to drop those links in the show notes. That way everyone can find you. And again, thank you so much.
Thank you, Courtney. Great show. You have great material. I really appreciate being on here. Keep up the good work. You got a great thing going here.